Right. Give everybody a few minutes to start rolling in. I see them coming. Oh, there's some familiar names. Max, I haven't seen you since yesterday. Same with Carrie. I feel like my fan club's following me around here.
The Alex Farling fan club.
Yeah, well, yesterday they were Marnie's fans because she was on with our new CEO after the acquisition. So
nice.
So certainly we have a loyal group of customers here on the life cycle side.
That is awesome.
Yeah. Where's everybody coming in from? How is it over there? It is it's like in the low 70s in Maryland today. I'm gonna say I was getting spoiled and it almost feels chilly, but close the windows so I don't mess up the backlighting because I'm trying to elevate the game here. But
yeah. Well, so if you hear the train, so my office is like literally across the street from the Metro North station here in New York. So if you hear the train,
okay.
I'm not leaving. It's just passing by.
I had a customer at my MSP that sat underneath of the fire whistle. Their office was like underneath of a water tower that had the fire whistle on it. And so we're on the phone with them. You knew when the fire station was getting punched out. So that was always fun. They're like, I got to mute you for a second. And they're just gone.
Well, it's a good thing this isn't at like 4 p.m. or something, because like around 4 p.m. you have like the New York City traffic going back and forth in terms of like the train. So you got the trains coming in, the trains going out. But
I'm a redneck. I don't like people that much. Much happier to stay away from all of that. All right, why don't we get going and we'll throw some slides up here and we'll get started. Oh, Seba coming in from Tampa and it is 86. I'm actually house shopping in Tampa right now. So maybe we'll be neighbors one of these days.
Tampa crew.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of the tech space down there and the weather is amazing. We were down there in maybe February and it was almost 80. So life gets nice down there. Not unhappy. All right.
Awesome. Well, so happy to kick it off. So Alex, thanks a bunch. Excited to be here with you, excited to have this conversation. I know we've been talking about this for a while, so really excited to chat a little bit about flexible payment options. So why don't I kick it off by just introducing myself, since it seems like everyone knows who Alex Farling is these days.
I don't know about that.
So I'm Victor Lopez, co-founder and CEO of Flexpoint. So a little background on myself. So I did not own an MSP, unlike the rest of the world here. So I actually was an investor prior to starting Flexpoint. So I actually invested in a bunch of MSP focused software companies. So ConnectWise was my first introduction into the MSP space and the MSP world. And so kind of long story short on why we started Flexpoint and why we think there's an opportunity and sort of a gap in the market to help out is I don't know about you, Alex, but I feel like I hear about a new cybersecurity company every day. And so there's a lot.
I haven't heard one yet today, but I'm sure it's coming.
There's a lot of like awesome content and like things to learn about security, which is obviously not to make light of it, but when I was an investor, a lot of the things that I focused on were how to help MSPs run their business efficiently, and I just felt like there's a tremendous gap in the market to actually help understand and sort of demystify some of these financial concepts and really focused on things like cash flow, but just generally running a business. So you owned a business, you owned an MSP for a long time, so I'm sure you knew what it was like. It gets lonely sometimes when you're sitting down thinking about cash flow. So that's kind of why we started Flexpoint. You can hear the train now, so as on cue. But yeah, I don't know if you want to give an introduction on your end. Otherwise, I'll jump in.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know me, if you haven't seen some lunatic on a soapbox screaming at clouds trying to help MSPs solve all their problems, Alex Farling. I am the co-founder and former channel chief of Lifecycle Insights. Now I am the community lead for Lifecycle Insights at now ScalePad. So we've been acquired since we started building this slide deck, obviously. But if you don't know my history, 16 and a half years as an MSP, we built Lifecycle Insights out of the problems that came from my customer experience, managing customer experience at my MSP. So we really had this foundational goal of being frictionless to work with. IT guys are typically seen as people who don't want to talk to humans, or it can be a little tough or tough to deal with, right? There's a few SNL skits that identify a couple of us spot on, right? But at the end of the day, what we found was we were really successful at the MSP when we could get our customers to stop thinking about the technology so much and just talk about how technology runs the business, and whatever we could do to be frictionless to work with, whatever we could do to make sure that they continue to ring the cash register faster, enabled them to use their business. We were huge Great America partners. We did a lot of leasing. Ideas like Flexpoint weren't even around, but when I saw it, I just went, hey, this is a thing that needs to exist. So, really enjoying working with you guys over there and having the opportunity to do this and share it and bring it out to a few folks today. But so yeah, let's jump in.
Awesome. Well, yeah, just in terms of agenda, I thought, let's bring the conversation a little bit. So, I think I'll start by just talking a little bit about, what I'm finding to be, and I think a lot of people, not just in the MSP space, but just generally are finding as well, just, a world of monthly payments and sort of why clients are expecting flexibility when it comes to payments and just checkout. And then, diving into how to actually position yourself, how to position flexible payments, because it's nice to talk about flexible payment options, how to actually utilize them and how to effectively position them to be successful is a whole nother, exercise in itself. So effectively positioning it during the sales process is huge and sort of an important aspect of it. And then, walking through some common objections, just, that you've heard them before, I'm sure. If you've worked with the leasing company, if you haven't worked with a leasing company, just kind of walk through those, think through why those objections come up, and then, maybe talk through ways to get around those. And then if we have some time, maybe talk a little bit more about sort of what Flexpoint is and how we are helping our partners, improve their cash flow. So I'm going to jump right into it. And so, one of the things, Alex, that I've noticed a lot, at least in my position, but you probably have noticed as well, but just generally, right? So like when you think about who is running small businesses these days, so clients of MSPs, like who is actually making decisions? And it tends to be, right, so it was like the baby boomer generation. Now you're starting to see a lot more millennials, and everyone is sort of in this very digital world. And so what we're starting to see is the way we behave in our consumer lives, right? Like the day-to-day, the technology we use in the consumer space, the way of paying in the consumer space is starting to shift expectations in B2B transactions. So the way we interact with our clients, or how MSPs interact with their clients. And so what's happening in general is upfront payment is a barrier. So it's become more prevalent now as, monthly payment being the default option to pay for everything. I mean, that's how we consume managed services to begin with, but any sort of upfront payment is becoming a barrier. So the expectation is really being driven by, this expectation of flexibility. And so there's some really good research that's coming out recently about this, right? So not sure if you're familiar with like Forrester Research, but Forrester Research puts out a ton of really good research on B2B transactions, B2B buyer decisions. And they recently came out with a report that basically concluded that a lot of the decision-making that is going on in B2B transactions is from this learned consumer behavior. So if you kind of look at the statistics, right, 92% of B2B purchases start with online research. So think about in your business, Alex, or all of our partners in their business, right? When they start to look at a vendor, exactly what we're doing right now, right? A webinar online. The research typically starts online. And so that's why people talk about your website is, your front lawn, it's your office space. It's like where your clients go to see you. And the other part to that, right? 68% of these buyers are doing this research online. They're doing it on their own. And then 60% of them don't want to talk to a sales rep. They don't want to get on the phone. They don't want to talk to a sales rep. So the primary source of information is online. So it's very much a digital experience. And a lot of that, at least according to Forrester, is coming from the consumer behavior. So, I mean, think about how you buy anything in your personal life, right?
It's hard to get a human to sell you something in a lot of cases, right?
Yeah, imagine trying to buy something off Amazon from a human or a sales.
Well, I can tell you Verizon Wireless, my last experience with them was maddening. And I'm 46, so I must be the old guy now. Like I'm the crotchety old guy. But I went to a Verizon store and said, I would like to buy an iPhone. And I handed them a credit card and they went, no, we only do these on monthly payments now. And I went, what do you mean? They're like, well, you can buy it, but it's this much money. And I went, okay, how much is the monthly payment? And I did my math and I went, it's exactly the same price. And they're like, yeah, but we really prefer that you put it on the monthly payment. And they're not even making any money at it.
Right.
Like they're losing money. And it pained me to put it on a payment because I'm just that human. Like I'm that crotchety old guy. But I understand now, as you're talking about it, how every interaction we have is training us to one more subscription model, right? Even down to Amazon buying paper towels and them going, hey, don't you want to subscribe and save, right? Save a nickel and we'll send them to you every month. So it's behavior that's being forced on our customers, even if it's not coming from us.
Yeah. And I mean, it's, and you know, the research comes out there. So like 75% of B2B buyers are using social networks. I mean, we all are on Reddit, right? We're all on Reddit. Every time we go to buy something, at least I go on Reddit and say like, let me search. I don't Google it, right? I search Reddit now, and it's becoming ChatGPT now instead of Google. It's like, all right, ChatGPT, I'm going to buy this. So tell me what I should be looking for. So, and so, yeah, so the trend, right, it's pretty self-evident. So 62% is basing their criteria solely on digital content. And so these are B2B transactions. We're not talking about, you know, buying an iPhone or buying, you know, a MacBook. We're talking about real B2B transactions. So the reason why I like to bring this context to sort of talk about it is because to your example, Alex, it's like, you know, when it comes to how you frame the buying decision, right? Whether it's a monthly versus an upfront decision, what is, you know, the barrier and what is the friction involved in that decision? So I want to get a little bit interactive here, see if we can get our handy poll working here. But essentially, I want to ask these questions around like, okay, like things that we use every day, right? So Spotify, Netflix, YouTube TV, buying a Tesla. How would the buying decision be affected if you're paying upfront versus monthly? So I'm going to kick it off with a poll here. So you can scan the QR code or go here. But first question I want to ask the group is, you know, Spotify, right? You use Spotify to listen to music. But if you were paying $120 upfront to use Spotify versus $10 a month, would you be more likely to consume Spotify? I mean, it's smaller.
The answer's coming back.
Yeah, answers coming back. They're coming in hot.
Yep.
But seriously, you know, it's a small dollar, but like, is it going to affect your buying decision? So Spotify, maybe not so much, just because it's, you know, $120 versus $10 a month. So,
but $10 is what, 2 trips through the Starbucks line, like maybe 1.
Right, exactly. So I'm sure there's a ton of people out there who are just, you know, hey, it's $120. So maybe not so much the Spotify, but what about Netflix, right? So Netflix is a perfect example of this monthly versus upfront cost. So when I was putting these slides together, some of this was actually pretty surprising to me. I was like, okay, you know, $240 versus $20 in terms of the upfront cost. Like, yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Alex? You think you'd pay for Netflix if you were paying $240 or not, or $20?
I probably would.
Yeah, right. It's, you know,
either way. I don't know that one hurts my feelings either way.
Yeah, I was joking with my wife. She was like, you know, Love is Blind, the live event was a mess. So she was ready to cancel, but maybe not. But okay, so Netflix is kind of, you know, on the way to maybe. What about YouTube TV, right? So I was surprised when I put this together. I was like, YouTube TV costs $780 right?
They just announced a price raise, so.
Okay, they just announced a price raise. So it's one of those things versus 65 versus $780. And it's just like, okay, maybe that's where it starts to be like, okay, I don't know, is YouTube TV important enough? But anyway, so the last example, Teslas, right? Are you gonna pay $90,000 for a Tesla? Or any other car, or are you going to do what most people do? Yes, I also pay for Twitter Blue, so I'm buying a Tesla. Or are you going to do what most people do, and it's finance a Tesla? So I think it's an interesting exercise because it shows us, right, how in our consumer lives we've been sort of conditioned to want to pay for things monthly over time as opposed to these large upfront purchases. So a question I like to ask our partners, prospective partners, is how many wins are you losing by not offering flexible payments?
Well, and for our Lifecycle Insights partners that are on here, you're presenting your customer with a budget. You carry that budget into them and go, hey, I need you to spend $30,000. Where does it fit in this budget? Right. How much easier would it be for you to say, I need you to make 5 payments of $6,000. Right. Where does that fit in this budget, right? And especially when you're showing it on that spreadsheet, those big numbers just make it, shoot out to what feels like an astronomical number to your customer. The value I see here is that I spend my whole day showing our customers how to sell with a budget, and a $30,000 project, a $20,000 project can be a budget buster,
right?
And it can be a real sticking point to them.
Yeah, and it's true. And so when I ask this question, oftentimes, more often than not, our partners, prospective partners, don't know the answer to this, because when you're not offering flexible payments, you're typically not reaching the point in the decision process where if you've lost the deal because you weren't offering flexible payment options.
Part of the sales process we teach is for you to go to someone and specifically say, hey, I'm going to come back with a $20,000 or $30,000 price tag with this. If I come back in that price range, can we still be friends, or are you going to throw me out? How many folks just go, nope, I'm going to throw you out. That's way beyond my budget. I can't do that. Right. It's a different conversation if you could say, hey, I'm going to come back with, $400 to $600 a month, or
just eliminate that from the conversation altogether, right? If the proposal, the presentation to begin with is like, this is going to cost you $500 a month as opposed to $20,000.
Yep. Yeah.
So, I like it a lot. So I always like to give examples, right? So we talk about the context of why B2B buyers, clients are looking for flexibility when it comes to purchasing, right? And so I like to provide that context, but also provide some examples, right? So some use cases where this actually comes into play. So Patrick Kemp, Loud and Clear Communications. So there are a relatively small MSP in Indiana, one of our first partners actually. And so when Patrick came to us originally, he was losing deals. So he had lost, I think when I talked to him, he had already lost 2 $20,000 projects. And it was because of this, right? So it was because he didn't have the ability to self-finance, right? He didn't have a line of credit to self-finance these projects, and his clients weren't in a position to pay for the projects up front. So Patrick, started working with us, and an opportunity came by where, there's this large regional coffee shop franchise. They're building out new locations throughout the Midwest, I think like Michigan, Ohio, Illinois. And so Patrick was bidding on this pretty big contract, right? So it's a bunch of locations, a bunch of build outs, mostly security cameras, security infrastructure. And he knew, like, one, it's a bigger organization, so they're used to net terms. They're used to having, that flexibility to pay over time. And as a small business, he just didn't have the ability to self-finance. So he actually ended up using our platform, and his client was able to, through the platform, just finance the whole project. Patrick got paid next day, and he got to work, and the client was able to pay, in monthly installments. And so when you think about Patrick and sort of loud and clear communications, right, as sort of a use case, an example of flexible payment options in play, a couple things, right? So increase conversion rates. So you're getting more yeses. Why? Because you're removing a barrier from the sales process, right? So we're always talking about how to improve sales as an MSP. And often what is most valuable is reducing barriers, right? Reducing friction from the sales process. So if you're quoting someone, $50,000 on a project, that in itself is friction, right? Because it's like, hey, you're requiring upfront $50,000 payment. So that's going to cause friction. So by offering flexible payment options, you're able to increase your conversion rate, get more yeses. You're also able to increase your average ticket size, your average sale, right? So maybe your clients can afford, $10,000 one-off projects paid up front. But if you're, whether it's a refresh, a different project that's, $30,000, $50,000, instead of putting it off, right, till there is a budget in place to pay for it, you can break it up into smaller payments and increase those size of transactions. And at the end of the day, right, all this increases revenue. I mean, Patrick's a perfect example. He 3x revenue from last year to this year just by being able to support these larger projects. So there's a lot of things that come into it, but it really kind of boils down to removing the barriers to the sales process, right? So cool, bunch of really interesting stuff on how flexible payment options help you win, but probably the most overlooked part of flexible payment options and how to effectively use them is, how do you even position yourself, right? So MSPs, as part of their sales process, right? It's whether it's well-documented process or not, it's positioning yourself is half the battle. How do you position it in a way that distinguishes you from the competition, or shows the value of what you're providing? And so same thing with flexible payment options. It's how you position it within the process is probably one of the most important aspects of it. So what we're doing here is essentially talking about, where in the process it makes most sense to bring up flexible payment options. So most important thing is probably starting the process early, right? To your point earlier, Alex, it's like, if you're waiting until the buying decision, assuming you get there, right? So if you're quoting someone $100,000, they might just look at you and be like, I can't pay $100,000 up front. Like, that's not, I can't work with you, right? So it's important.
Even your existing customers will tell you,
exactly.
A bunch of you have a 2012 server sitting in a closet somewhere with a countdown coming up of the end of this year. And you're like, yeah, this guy won't spend 20 grand. He won't spend 15 grand. And so I can't get him to replace this equipment. So I think this fits logically in every stage of the customer journey, whether it's a brand new customer, whether it's somebody trying a brand new prospect, whether it's somebody trying to finance an onboarding or a big project so that you don't have to give away your onboarding for free. Right. Or even somebody who's trying to finance an expansion, or just an equipment age out that they need to go replace a server, replace a bunch of Windows 7 equipment or Windows 10 equipment that's still hanging around. I think it fits every stage in the client cycle. And if I had an option like this for my clients, I would send it out as kind of a marketing campaign to go, hey, we're becoming easier to work with. Right. Even if, I'm sure you've had one customer at some point ask you about leasing or flexible payments. So then I'm going to take that and turn it right into a marketing campaign that says, we hear you. And I'm going to go tell all my customers about it.
Exactly.
This is that, hey, we're doing everything we can to come to you, to meet where you are, and be frictionless to work with.
Yeah, exactly. So and that's right. It's choosing the right context, right? To your point, there's so many different situations where this makes sense, but making sure you sort of capitalize on the right concept. And the last thing which we'll touch on is just don't make assumptions, right? So a lot of people, think they understand the financial position of their clients, and so it's better not to make these assumptions. But again, so when you think about understanding client expectations, so questions I tell our partners to ask their clients all the time is, how do your clients consume technology today? Are they leasing office equipment? So like, do they have copiers that they lease?
If they
do,
tell you
then
no, which they will, ask them about the copier, right? Because most of them don't
right.
own it. They'll go, no, we don't lease anything. Well, what about the copier? Oh, well,
Yeah.
yeah, we pay something for that. I think it's maintenance or something. Nope, that copier is 100% leased.
Right. Or even just their software, right? Like, do they pay for their SaaS subscriptions monthly, or are they paying upfront? And if they do pay, let's say they're that magic unicorn that pays for everything in cash and everything's paid up front, that's fine. That's good to know. It's understanding.
That's a great customer to have, but
exactly.
not everybody falls into that bucket.
Expectations and meeting them where they are. And the second part to that, right, is just talking about flexible payment options up front. Like, don't wait until the buying decision. It's usually too late. Remove the barriers to yes as early as possible, and frankly differentiate your offering. If you're competing with the regional MSP or someone else for the business, like, differentiating your offering this is a perfect area to differentiate your offering, flexible payment options. So and
one of the, before you go on, one of the things I used to say to my customers, and it got my biggest customer at the time to start doing leasing. One of the things I said to him was, would you rather pay $80,000 today, or do you have something better you could do in your business with 80 grand? And maybe we should put this in a finance option so that you can pay for it over time. And
exactly.
just getting their brain thinking about, with $80,000 or $100,000, you could hire a sales guy and pay him for 4 months or 6 months or whatever, and actually go generate some business. How could you pour that money back into your business to make money, where the small percentage that gets paid on a lease or gets lost to finance charges or something like that isn't really that big a deal?
Yeah, I mean, I use that example all the time, right? So don't assume how your client wants to manage their cash flow. In fact, clients that are utilizing credit or utilizing flexible payment options are probably doing so because they're really good at managing their cash flow and are able to put that capital to use somewhere else. To your point, hire someone else, invest into sales and marketing. But going back to something you said earlier, Alex, in terms of like what the right opportunities are, right? So you mentioned things like client onboarding. Like, yeah, don't just give away client onboarding. But if it's a 10 grand, and that's a perfect use case that we do all the time. It's like 10 grand client onboarding. Don't charge up front, pay it over time, and give the client the flexibility. But again, the second example you gave in terms of like technology refresh, right? You have an old server sitting around, hasn't been upgraded, perfect example. And QBRs, I mean, you're the master of QBRs, so
spend a little time talking about them. Yeah. And quite often the technology refreshes come out of them, but also new opportunities, new clients building out a new building, and they need to go install some new technology, right? They need switches and firewalls and access points and wiring and all that stuff. This is the time to do that. That's not an expense that they're thinking about all the time. Bringing on new employees has all its own expenses. Growth sucks cash. So if there's something you can do, even the train agrees, growth sucks cash. And if there's anything you can do as your client's growing to help them spread that cash out a little bit, they're going to see value in that. And this is what builds relationships.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so, and don't make assumptions, right? So often you hear my clients have a ton of cash. They don't need flexible payment options. But again, you likely have a ton of cash because they're really good at managing their cash flow.
I could have bought this for cash.
Right.
And
exactly.
Looked at it and said, oh, wait, they're going to finance it for me. And inflation will hurt them worse than it'll hurt me. I'm basically, there's no reason not for me to take a cash deal. And that was a personal deal. If it was my own, my business money, and I think if I understand my business and I know I can put that $1,200 for a new iPhone into Google AdWords every month for my business, and 12 months of $100 a month, I'm sure I could make enough money to pay for 10 iPhones.
Yeah.
Why am I paying for that up front?
Exactly. And that's the thing, right? It's like, don't make assumptions about why a client wants to use flexible payment options. I mean, it doesn't mean they're a worse business. In fact, in oftentimes it just means they're really good at managing their cash flow and managing capital. So yeah, so the other part to this, right, is there's often a bunch of objections. So you mentioned leasing companies, working with like Great America, for example. And so before I started Flexpoint, a big reason why I wanted to get into this space was because I had heard from, so many MSPs about their experience with leasing companies, right? Whether it's, hey, I got to call up a rep, they got to send me an application that I got to send out to their clients. So I put out a poll here on just, the typical things we hear, right? So I've tried a leasing company before and it's painful, right? We've all heard that. I don't want to talk to a leasing company sales rep. I don't want to fill out this application, wait 2 weeks. By the time I find out, everything's gone. Or, people are worried about credit checks, personal guarantees, or even things like hardware, right? Like a lot of things, a lot of, as part of the digital transformation, so many things are limiting the use of hardware, right? No one's doing as much servers as they used to. No one's doing, a lot of the old hardware that they used to do. So a lot of people often think, well, if I'm not selling hardware, like how can I even incorporate flexible payment options? Or, basic things like financing is just too complex. Figuring out how to use it, what I'm responsible for, and what my client is responsible for, are, kind of the objections that come up. So I find often sort of when we talk to prospective partners about using Flexpoint, that they're usually coming from a position or from an experience where they tried to use a leasing company and it was just a bad experience. Either the leasing company wouldn't work with them because of the size of their business, or the process to actually get their clients financing was just painful. So common objections, right? So it all boils down to friction. So it all comes down to, if you're using a leasing company, if you're using sort of the traditional method of financing, it's typically an offline process, requires back and forth credit checks, all of the stuff that people are worried about. And so when I decided to start Flexpoint, I took all this information, right? I took all this feedback that I was hearing and said, well, how can we improve upon this? How can we make the experience frictionless, provide the same benefits of flexible payment options without, all the negative stuff that comes along with? So a little bit about us and how we fit in within the flexible payment options, right? So what we are so focused on and try to communicate to our partners is, don't be a bank, right? You're in the business of providing really good IT services, security, very important things for the small and medium-sized businesses of, globally. So the last thing you need to be doing is being a bank. Like, you should not be providing credit to your clients. And so what happens is often MSPs feel like they have no other option, right? Like, I'm going to lose this deal if I don't self-finance it. So
I actually did that at my MSP with a brand new startup who couldn't get financing themselves. And I didn't want to lose the deal. I knew I'd get managed services along with it, and I did. And it wound up being a good deal, but God, did I take on a lot of risk. I mean, I think we financed a $50,000 hardware as a service gig because the startup they had spent $1 million on lab equipment. They just didn't have it. So it was one of those things where they were shopping for a provider that would give them hardware as a service.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? So it's taking, like, we all understand the value, I think, of flexible payments, but it's just the process of providing it, of getting it, is what I think drives a lot of people away from utilizing it. So that's our goal, right? So we approve people within 24 hours. It's all done through the same checkout experience as if you're, paying for an invoice with a credit card or an ACH transaction. It's hardware, software, services, everything. So we're talking about onboarding fees. So that's a perfect example. We have partners who do a $10,000 onboarding fee. That's, they use it to scope out, find out any like tech debt, anything that needs to be approved. And so what they were seeing is clients would sometimes balk, like even if it's, a pretty big size deal, a 10K MRR deal, a client might be like, well, why am I paying you 10K up front to like tell me what's wrong or what I need to improve? And so they've been able to spread that out over 6 months, and that's, helped with that conversation. So no, now it's not a $10,000 upfront payment. Now it's, a couple $100 a month. And the other thing I like to point out is we work with all sizes of MSPs. So like as small as, a 1 or 2 man shop that's just getting started. I mean, Patrick and Loud and Clear Communications is a perfect example, right? Like they were just getting started. They weren't getting credit from a bank. They were trying to move up market. It was hard for them to compete without having, this ability to offer flexible payments. So that's another part of, what we're focused on is the whole spectrum of the market. I mean, there's small MSPs, there's medium-sized MSPs, there's some very big MSPs. So I think flexible payment options is something that all MSPs could utilize, not just.
I think it's super powerful. And one of the things we saw was that once we got someone using leasing at our MSP, they stopped worrying about every nickel and dime they spent on a workstation. Like there was no more, hey, let me go look this up on Amazon and see if I can get it there cheaper. Because guess what? You hold the power with the leasing. You're the one who's going to that customer and going, for $99 a month for 12 months, you get this new machine. And they're going to Amazon and saying, well, I can get it for $900 on Amazon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's fine. Yeah. Yeah. But you gain back some power in the relationship when you're the one who offers that benefit. And again, you're removing friction from the relationship.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely a way to not get secret shopped against all the other vendors that are out there on the internet.
Absolutely. So we're getting towards the end of it. So I'd be remiss without talking a little bit more about what Flexpoint is, right? We focused a lot about flexible payment options. I mean, that's part of our name, right? Flexibility at the point of sale. So that's where the name comes from. But what I like to tell partners, besides, the ease of use in our financing, we also offer, everything else you would expect from like a Connect Booster or WisePay, right? So we're doing a client-facing portal with payment automation, integrations, credit card processing, ACH. And so we're bringing everything that you would expect in a payment platform and combining it with the leasing experience, all in one place that's very easy to use, simple for clients to understand, and all in the same place, right? So yeah, they don't have to go somewhere else to finance the transaction. They go click on the invoice and they're able to select to finance that invoice there and there. So just thought I'd mention that as part of the platform. It's, it's a big core feature is the financing, but beyond that, we also offer sort of the payment portal and the payment processing as well.
Awesome.
I got a question there. It is, so yeah, we're currently only in the US, obviously because of currency and other stuff related to dollars. We're only in the US, but stay tuned for Canada and then Australia and New Zealand.
Max is going to make you work a little harder. If I remember right, he's in South Africa.
Oh, all right. That's going to be
Cape Town. That's it.
All right. A little longer.
My memory's not very good, but somehow I remember that. He's got a great accent if you ever get to chat with him.
Yeah.
He sounds way more fun than us when you get to sit down and chat with him. So
awesome.
So, I see we're kind of wrapping up, but I want to expand just a little bit because we talked all about flexible payments and everything today. And that was obviously the conversation. We wanted to give you not just a platform that will help you offer this, but also some of the logic and some of the ways that you can work this into your sales conversations, your QBRs, your interactions with your customer, that lifespan of the customer. Flexpoint isn't just flexible payment options. All right, you guys have an entire platform that has some other functions in it. For the folks who are here, and we got about 25 of them left here, I'm going to go through and just have you talk about the other couple of features and functions. And we don't need to do slides or anything crazy, but
Yeah.
they'll recognize some of the other features and functions that are in Flexpoint, and one in particular may really stand out since there's been so much acquisition in that space.
Yeah. No, you mentioned the acquisition, right? So, the other core, the other core product or core feature of our platform is just, the payment automation. So, Connect Booster is a perfect example of sort of who we, compete with in that space. But so we're offering a client portal where clients can go look at their invoices, pay their invoices, remove that, need to respond to tickets around billing. So everything around auto pay, being able to provide, automation around auto pay and getting paid for those monthly recurring invoices, right? So we think of our platform as serving the traditional managed service side of an MSP. So the auto pay for ongoing recurring payments, credit cards, ACH, and also serving for, more project-based work. So things that need to be financed. So all in one solution, all in one place. So yeah, for sure. I mean, we've obviously seen a lot of success recently from people moving from some of those other platforms because of acquisitions and stuff like that. But not all acquisitions are bad, as you can attest to.
I like to think not. I like to think not. But there are some vendors who don't play nice in the space, and there are some folks who just have had a bad experience with a vendor here or there. I've heard a lot of noise about those two products being acquired, and it's nice to know that folks have options, right?
Sure.
It's really interesting to me that Flexpoint decided to say, hey, we're going to do something that is necessary in the industry and that everybody uses, and then we'll open up and expand to an additional feature that actually makes your life easier and can make you more money. So,
Exactly.
If you're already in the Flexpoint portal processing all of your credit cards and everything, you're ready with this if a customer comes and asks for it.
Exactly.
And so if you're a young MSP and just getting started and you're looking to start with that first payment portal, why not use the one that offers you additional flexibility as you go? So that's my 2 cents on it.
No, for sure. I mean, that's you hear flexibility a lot, and that's what we're after.
It's by design, right?
Yeah, by design, and it's removing the friction from the sales process, and where the most friction exists is at checkout. So we're there to help. Sure.
Yeah, that's the easiest place for a customer to say no, right? When they have to part with their cash. So
exactly.
I think that's a good place to leave it. I think those are great closing notes. Thanks everybody for coming out and hanging out today. This is recorded, and we'll get the recording of it out to each of you a little bit later tonight. And if you've got questions, comments, or anything like that, Victor, where's the best place for people to reach out and get a hold of you?
Yeah, feel free to reach out, Victor@getflexpoint.com.
There you go. There it is. And you guys know where to find me, alex.farling at lifecycleinsights.io, or on any and all of the social medias, although I try and avoid the book of faces every chance I get. All right, guys. Thanks so much. I hope to see you all soon. And if you're going to be in Nashville for the 7-Figure event, in Vegas for the Kaseya event, or let's see, at MSP GeekCon, I'll be at all 3 of those. Which ones are you going to be at, Victor?
I'm going to be in Vegas next week.
Vegas next week. So come see both of us next week, and you can make each of us buy you a beer.
Yeah, for sure.
All righty. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.